This is
the Bottom Bins Podcast.
Oh yeah! Hello and welcome back to the Bottom Bins. This is the second installment of our summer transfer window specials. We're back on the video today for you. So I think we'll just get straight into it, boys. Oren, this is very much your specialist subject. This is what you wanted to talk about this week. So I think first off, we're going to focus on the Saudi League and the transfers and possible transfers that could be going there to that league. Starting off, lads, the biggest one in that Saudi League is Karim Benzema. Left Real Madrid and has made his way over to Saudi. I think it's Al Ittihad. I hope I'm pronouncing that. Yeah, I hope I will. I hope I'm doing them justice there. They have also signed N'Golo Kante from Chelsea. Again, big coup for them as well. So, opening it up, lads. Then just on those two transfers, I mean, they both make that team stronger. Two Frenchmen in there to that league. What do you think?
Brilliant for the league. Look, we're seeing the influence that Cristiano Ronaldo has, to be honest. We said it last week about all these players that could potentially be heading to Saudi Arabia, and every single day we're seeing more and more names linked and potentially moving. And it's looking like every name that's been linked so far, with the exception of a couple of players and the likes of Romelu Lukaku and Heung-min Son most recently, have said yes to going to Saudi Arabia. So um, look, it's obviously good for the league. Cristiano Ronaldo, very well, infamously said that he sees Saudi Arabia, the Saudi Arabian league, as going to be one of the top five leagues in the world in the next 5 years. And look, if they keep going the way they're going, there is no reason why that may not happen. Look, I can't see a lot of European A's still going on to the Saudi Arabian league, to be honest, despite all these players going. But then again, Lionel Messi's away to the MLS. Does that mean that more European football fans will watch MLS? It probably does, but look, it's difficult to say in this situation. MLS, whenever they first kind of came on into the fold, done the exact same thing. A load of marquee signings. We've seen it with the Chinese league more recently. A lot of big money signings. And it looked like everybody was going to go there for major money, and it completely fell on its head. They brought in spending caps and wage caps, and will the same happen in Saudi Arabia? Who knows? But to sign players like Karim Benzema and N'Golo Kante is a really statement. It's a statement of intent for these Saudi teams, and even with the other names that are linked, it could be a very competitive league next year.
Yeah, definitely, Warren. I agree with you, and I think statement of intent is probably the best way to word it. But look, I'm going to say the same thing I said last week when we were chatting about Messi. I still feel like these players had quite a bit left to give in terms of European football, and I still view them as strange moves for those players, especially Benzema. Like, Benzema was okay, maybe not last season, but the season before was probably the best footballer in the world. Ballon d'Or winner, Champions League winner, scored to over 40 goals for Real Madrid in that season. And I know he struggled with injury this season, but I mean, he was still one of the world's best. And in my opinion, still had plenty to give. Don't know about you, Connor. Don't know what you think about it. Like,
No, definitely. I've seen he's over 350 goals for Real Madrid. Unbelievable player. Still playing, obviously didn't reach the heights of the previous year, but still a really top player. And a lot of top clubs would have taken a Benzema, 100%. I know he is a bit older. I think, what is he, like 35, 36, but still a top player. And Kante surprised me as well. Kante was a real surprise because I still think he is a top player. Obviously injury prone. There was talk that he was going to sign the new deal with Chelsea. Obviously didn't come to fruition, but you know, it is becoming one of them things. It's going to be, is it going to be a top five league? I don't know, because obviously you're going to have the star players, but what's going to be the quality of the other players? Because not every team's going to have Benzema and Kante. They were showing games on Sky Sports just with Ronaldo. They were just showing his games, so I do think there will be a bit more media presence, and you're going to see probably more, articles online about it and stuff because these players are playing there. But these are still good players, and the thing about China was it seemed to be more like an awkward place to go. the language barrier as well. This place, Saudi Arabia is probably will be a place where these players aren't going to go and struggle. Um, so you have that, and the MLS obviously got messy, but the Saudi League are getting some top players. They're getting linked to players like still like as you were saying, like Kaku. They even seen Perisic's son, Matt Doherty, top talent. But it's just going to be about the different, the standard of the other teams. I see the top four teams are owned by the Public Investment Fund, so they're going to dominate. Um, it's just going to be about the other players, like their own Saudi Arabia players are going to have to put a lot of money into, obviously, underage football and stuff like that, because it is going to take a long time for that league to get up to the standards of the top five leagues. Because like even like the French league would have top players, English league, just natural, born players. But this is how it starts. This is how you gain attraction. They'll have a massive media presence in the coming years.
Yeah, 100%, 100%, completely agreed. And look, lads, it's not just the likes of your Kantes and your Benzemas. Ruben Neves has agreed a £55 million move over to Saudi Arabia as well. Like, this is a guy who is very much in the peak of his powers, very much one of the best midfielders in the Premier League, and it's going to be a big miss for Wolves, obviously, but it's going to be a big miss for the Premier League as well, losing a player like Neves. And really, yeah, I know the financial incentive is massive, but again, it's just one of these transfers I can't really wrap my head around.
Wasted. Absolute waste of a talent. He's only 26 years of age. He could have went anywhere from Wolves. Could have went anywhere. We're looking at a player who at 17 years of age captained Porto in the Champions League. He had a great spell at Porto as a young footballer, went to Wolves, proved himself, as you said, as one of the Premier League's elite in terms of midfielders. Could have went anywhere from there. And him going to Saudi Arabia at the peak of his powers, really, at his age, as you said, Connor, it doesn't make sense. Yes, financially, it's fantastic. Looking at it at financial aspect and from a family aspect and stuff like that, absolutely phenomenal. But from a sporting and competitive aspect, it is absolutely ridiculous in my opinion. I fully understand the likes of Karim Benzema and even N'Golo Kante going because they are winding down their careers, and the majority of people we are seeing linked to them have really passed their peak and are still playing European football, but have passed their peak realistically. But this one doesn't make sense to me. I understand from Wolves, 55 million with a year left in his contract. It's fantastic business for them. Absolutely fantastic. But for Ruben Neves, I think he's fully tarnished his name as a reputable Premier League proven midfielder.
Yeah, I am in agreement with you, lad. It is just one of those transfers where, like, we always get one or two of them a season where you just sort of look at it and you go, what? Like, where'd that come from? And this is a very much a where'd that come from. Like, this guy has been linked with Arsenal, Chelsea, United, Barcelona. Like, he is linked with the top clubs in Europe. And, at 25 or 26 years of age, he still has a lot to accomplish within those leagues. So it is strange to see him move on. What do you think about Neves then, Connor?
Yeah, it was the biggest surprise, to be honest. Obviously, a player still maybe he hasn't even reached his peak yet. 26 years of age. I feel like it was a good deal for Wolves because obviously, as Oren said, year left in the contract. They get 47 million pounds for him. That's a great deal. Barcelona were looking at him, but obviously they don't really have the financial power at the minute, and he didn't want to take a risk. But he was talking about, oh, I want to play Champions League football now. I love Wolves, but I need to go play Champions League football, and then he goes to the Saudi League. It was a surprise, to be honest. Obviously, he's going to get life changing money, but it it does say a lot about his motivation. Did he want to be? Does he want to be a top player? Does he want to be remembered as a top player? Even for Wolves last year, I thought he was their best player. He was one of their top scorers from midfield, playing that like defensive role. Set piece specialist, obviously. Great all round player, and I thought a lot of top clubs around Europe would have been looking at him. Even like as you said, Man United, Arsenal. He's been linked for years to these top clubs, but that's just it was his decision. And as we've seen, as you spoke about earlier about the China stuff as well, there was a few players that went to China where you're kind of like, that was a surprise. Even Edo when he went to Russia, it's kind of surprising. But that's just a decision they have to make, and it might be one he financially he'll do well, but he might regret it in the future. He might think, what could have been? What could I have done? I could play Champions League football. Barcelona seem to be up and coming. But it's his decision.
I hope. Sorry, sorry to interrupt. I hope that on an international stage he's not picked for Portugal.
I think he probably still will, lad. To be honest.
Well, Ronaldo still picked, so I think he'll still be picked.
How about this Cristiano Ronaldo and Ruben Neves, Dorman, to tell you the truth?
He's been playing for Portugal for years, and he has been a decent player for them. So I wouldn't be
I understand that too, but there's more, there's better, not better perhaps, but there's more options as a midfield for Portugal than there is up top, and you don't replace Cristiano Ronaldo, to tell you the truth.
Mm. Look, I think it is. It's it is a tough one. It is a tough one. The only defense I would give Neves on that is that he has sort of been one of those integral players in their midfield over really the last couple of tournaments, and I do think it will be hard just to displace him. Look, I agree with you. It's a massive step down in his career in terms of quality level, but I think Neves is still a good enough player to play for Portugal, regardless of.
Oh, by all means, he is. But do you not think international managers should be looking at a competitive level? Like everybody slates Gareth Southgate for not even picking Tomori in Serie A because he doesn't deem it as good a level as the Premier League. So how the fuck can you choose Ruben Neves over somebody who's, you know, doing bits all over Europe?
Yeah, look, I think it's a good debate, and it's definitely one that I think it could seriously be had. The problem is though, if more players do join Neves over in this league, and the league obviously does become stronger, are we going to have to start looking at the Saudi Arabian league as a serious sort of league? Now, by all means, I'm not saying top five league, but I think it would be the same way, Oren, as if, like, let's say national teams pick, like, say Brazil, for example. Like, if Brazil take somebody to the World Cup that's from the Brazilian league, like, is the Brazilian league really any better than the Saudi Arabian league? I don't know.
No, like I I really do understand the points that you're making, and I fully am expecting to see Ruben Neves play for Portugal, like at the next tournament or the next time Portugal have a match. Do you know what I mean? I'm fully expecting that. I just mean I think on an international perspective, I think picking from your own country is a bit different than picking from the Saudi Arabian League, and I do think that if more players do join the Saudi Arabian League, as you say, it will become a bigger league naturally. And look, it could break into the top five leagues in the world. You never know. But from the majority of players that I'm seeing linked, you're seeing players that are 30 plus who are winding down in their careers or looking to pay a day before they finish off. Ruben Neves, 26, in the peak of his powers, prime midfielder, could have went to any team in Europe and probably slotted into their midfield 11 or into their first 11 into their midfield. I just think from a professional level, he's let himself down.
Yeah, look, I really can see both sides of the argument. To be honest, I think it is an interesting one, and it is just one that I think we're just really going to have to wait and see, and watch this story as it sort of plays out over the summer, because by all means, like, Ruben Neves is not going to be the last player to move to Saudi Arabia in this window. But moving it back then to England and back to the Premier League. So Arsenal today launched a second bid for Declan Rice, £90 million bid. It seems as though it's gonna be rejected, but Arsenal seem to be very, very busy here early on in the market. Declan Rice and Kai Havertz look like they could be on their way to the Emirates for next season. So I think we'll start with Declan Rice, lads. Obviously, there is interest from Manchester City there as well, but Arsenal are very much the front runners. They're the ones that are actively pushing to try and get this deal sort of over the line and done quickly. So again, lads, just opening it up. What do you think? Declan Rice, good fit for Arsenal?
Yeah, I definitely think so. I think it's an upgrade on Partey. I see they're already kind of. I thought Partey, last season for half the year was very, very good, but I just don't think he's good enough going forward and on the ball. I think he got away with a lot in the start of the season, and then as the season went on, he really disappointed. And I see there already links it for of him leaving Arsenal, which I wouldn't be surprised with. I actually do rate Declan Rice. I thought last season, I know we had a few arguments that, not arguments, but you mentioned the point, like he was underperforming. But as the season went on, he really stepped up for West Ham, and he's in a bad position. The team was going really poorly, but as the captain as well, he has that leadership. I think he's a good all-round player. I think he's actually underrated going forward as well. He might not even play that DM role, because if they get someone like Lavia who they're being linked to, or Casado from Brighton, he might be able to slot into that Xhaka role and get forward a bit more. But I definitely think Rice is a really, really good player. And with Arsenal, they are trying to get their business done early, and they want to do that obviously to get the players in. Because we've seen with previous years, like teams wait the whole transfer window, try and get a good deal, and it doesn't happen. They overspend, and then the players take time to get used to the Premier League, get used to the team they're playing in. Well, you're not going to have that with Rice either. You're going to need a Premier League player, an English player. And I think for Arsenal, it'd be a really, really good deal. Man City might come in and steal him, which wouldn't be surprising either. If you look like last year, Martinez went to United over Arsenal. We came in and took him. And they lost Rafinha to Chelsea, and they lost Mudryk even in January to Chelsea. So for Arsenal, I think it was kind of rejected because it was 75 plus 15, and the 15 were very, wide of the mark, kind of crazy add-ons. I think he was going to have to achieve mad things. But for Arsenal, they need that position, and I think Rice will be perfect for Arsenal.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those ones where I agree with you, Connor. I do think Party definitely towards the back end of that season underperformed. It was something that we highlighted with our end of season review, just how Arsenal didn't really have that cover to come in and just give those boys a rest. And Declan Rice, I think, is one of those players, especially if they're going to lose Party and Xhaka. Like, he's going to come into that midfield and start straight away. And I think he would be a really, really good player, especially under that Arteta system. I think he's very moldable. He's still only 24 years of age. So I'm definitely excited to see whether that deal gets over the line. But Oren, coming to you next, like, obviously, when you hear that Man City's lurking in the background, if you were an Arsenal supporter, would that worry you at all?
Yeah, 100%. I think the moment City come in, it's a done deal. To be honest, Declan Rice, not even just from a sporting level, like City's going to win. Maybe the league next year, maybe the Champions League again. They could do no trouble. You know what I mean? They have that potential. And Declan Rice knows that. And even from a personal standpoint, there's a load of England boys in that Man City team that Declan Rice is probably really friendly with as well. And I just think from a sporting perspective, it makes a lot more sense for any player to go to Manchester City than it does for them to go to Arsenal, especially a player of Declan Rice's caliber who's going to walk into either midfield. He starts for Man City, he starts for Arsenal. Do you know what I mean? It's different if it was the likes of, like, if this was Calvin Phillips that we were talking about. I know obviously he has went to Man City, but if he was linked with Arsenal or linked with Man City, he was going to be guaranteed game time at Arsenal, not necessarily guaranteed game time at Man City. From a sporting level, it would make more sense, or rather from a professional level, it would make more sense for him to go to Arsenal. But obviously he went to City for achievements. But look, I think this is why Arsenal are doing their business early. We've seen it with Kai Havertz as well. There's Real Madrid were interested, they've pulled out. Bayern Munich's their only competitor at the minute, but it looks like he will go to Arsenal, and I think he will go to Arsenal. Romeo Lavia, as Connor said, looks like he's could be going to Arsenal. Yuri and Timber is in talks with Arsenal as well. There's a real statement of intent from Mikel Arteta. I was about to say Arsenal Wenger, from Mikel Arteta. That I know what the fuck. Going into next season.
Just a few years too late for that one.
I know, Jesus, my head was going mad there. Yeah, but it's a real statement of intent after the season that they did have. It looks like he's clearly pushing to close that gap fully on Manchester City and compete for the league. However, it could really, really backfire. It could really backfire. If these players flop, if Arsenal go back into their old ways and are competing for 6th and 7th next season, Arteta's gone. And that will be off the back of a heavy summer spending. But look, just to finish off on Declan Rice, if he goes to Arsenal, he's going to do fantastic. If he goes to Manchester City, he's going to do fantastic.
Well, look, I agree. I think Rice definitely, look, no matter which side he goes to, I think he has the qualities and the capabilities to play for either and play in either system, to be honest. Just touching on Havertz then, look, £65 million. It looks like that deal's going to get done, and it looks like it's going to be wrapped up this week as well. Personal terms all agreed, so the deal has got the green light. Look, this is a player we have criticised heavily throughout the season, lads. This is a player that all three of us have thought is not quite up to scratch, and really, if we're being brutally honest about it, we've all sort of thought that he's not Premier League quality. Um, so really, I'll come to you first, Connor. Is this a strange signing?
I was gonna say this kind of came out of nowhere. I heard about the links with Real Madrid, and I was kind of thinking, why would they go for Havertz? I went for Hosselu instead. Um, but for me, Havertz obviously is a young player. He's only 24. Arteta obviously coming off a great season. I know a few Arsenal fans myself, and they're thinking, why is this happening? But they're thinking, oh, we'll back Arteta because he's obviously improved so many young players. But I was even looking at the stats for Havertz on his goals to game ratio was just brutal. And even the year that they won the Champions League, obviously he scored the winner. That was his only goal in the Champions League in 12 games. So are they going to play him as striker? That's where they need a striker. I don't know if they're going to play him striker. Are they going to play him as a cam? Where like Odegaard has that position, even have Smith Rowe off the bench. They're obviously trying to strengthen their squad. They're trying the City approach where you're going to have two players in every position that are high caliber, and you're seeing that working with City as the season goes on. You could tell last year, as we kept saying, if Arsenal's going to lose this league, it's not even going to come down to pressure. It's just going to come down to the squad depth, and they didn't have that. They were bringing in like Jorginho at the end. They were getting desperate. Um, for me, it's a crazy one. I think if I was an Arsenal fan, I'd want a more out and out striker than Havertz. We've downplayed him for months, and I just don't see a real, like, obviously his talent, but even his finishing is awful at times. His positioning, he's clumsy on the ball. I just don't see a top player there.
Yeah, I agreed. I mean, he only scored 10 goals this season. He's not your natural goal getter. I don't think he comes in and plays as a striker. I don't think he's better than Jesus. It's going to be strange to see where they play him. And again, I don't even think he's creative enough to play as a 10. And I don't think he could play back up to Odegaard. I don't really know what the figuring is behind this. I don't know about you, Oren. What do you think about Havertz?
Look, as you say, we've criticised him all season. I'm not going to stand here now or sit here now and say I think it's going to be a brilliant signing because I don't. But I am going to contradict myself a little bit. I don't think he's going to fail. I think £65 million is a huge, huge fee, and I think, as you both said, don't really understand the thinking behind it because they need a striker, an out and out striker, and for 65, £70 million, you could get a top class striker like Gonçalo Ramos is talking about going for £70 million. I think that's his release clause at Benfica, and if it's a out and out forward that they're looking, why wouldn't you go for him? But obviously Arteta, as you said, Dorman, there's all those Arsenal fans are going to trust him because of the way he's nurtured their talent so far. Um, it depends really where they play him, as you have said. I did see whenever it was first announced that Arsenal were in for him, David Ornstein, really, really good journalist, as we all know, really reliable. He said that Arteta sees him as a perfect, sorry, what is the word? Like partner to Jesus, like playing, uh, like almost like a provider. So I think Arteta sees him playing as a two up top, which will be interesting with obviously the wingers on either side and Odegaard behind, which could be very interesting if they don't get Declan Rice, who obviously is able to play as a defensive midfielder but also get up the field and whatever. So by the sounds of things, Arteta is going to be taking a very, very attacking approach to the Premier League next season. But £65 million, as I said, when you look at the potential transfers of two players who we have criticised all season in Mason Mount and Kai Havertz, potentially going for a combined 125, £130 million. It's crazy, the football market that we're in.
Yeah, agreed, agreed. And just moving it on from Arsenal then, lads, I think we may as well go to City. Confirmed today that Man City and Joe Cancelo will part ways with one another. There's no reconciliation between manager and player, and arguably one of the best fullbacks in world football is going to be allowed to move on this summer. So just a simple question to both of these lads. Oren, starting with you, where's the best place for Cancelo to end up at?
It's tough. It's not as easy as saying one club with Cancelo, because in January, whenever we first heard about him moving to Bayern Munich, we were like, "What has happened?" This is one of the best in his position in the world. But clearly, obviously, there was problems at Bayern Munich as well. Clearly, there is problems with his attitude, and his approach to training and matches and stuff. So there obviously is a problem that needs fixed there. Personally, bringing it back to Arsenal, I think he's going to Arsenal. And I think he would do well there, especially when they're relying on Ben White and right back. This is a player who can play right back and left back, so he's unless he's injured, he's guaranteed to start. I think he could start ability wise for every team in the world, to be honest, on ability. Um, he could go back to Juventus. You know, you never know. It's difficult. But I see him going to Arsenal personally. It's just the thinking behind it is there's obviously something in the background. Everybody needs to be thinking there's obviously something in the background, especially if Man City are also willing to let Kyle Walker leave. So, do you know what I mean? So it's not like on ability ways, oh, Kyle Walker's leaving because he's only got a year left. So Cancelo can stay or whatever. There's clearly something with Joe Cancelo, or just between Joe Cancelo and Pep Guardiola, that's unfixable at the minute. So yeah, I see him going to Arsenal.
Yeah, look, I think Arsenal's definitely one of those destinations that he could end up. I could definitely still see him staying in the Premier League 100%. But then there are a few clubs around Europe that are struggling for fullbacks, and I think it was. I think the thing that has surprised me the most is that with how poor Alphonso Davies has been this season at Bayern, that he didn't really get more of an opportunity over there because he is a great player. We all know this. He's an established international, and he has proven. I mean, look, we were literally only saying. Not the season just passed, but the season previous. Like he was the best fullback in the world. So it's not as if clubs wouldn't be lining up to try and take him. So it's definitely going to be an interesting one. Connor, what about yourself then? Is there anywhere or one destination in particular that you could see Cancelo ending up at then?
I was going to go for Arsenal as well, just because the Arteta link as well as obviously them needing a right back. It is going to be weird to see what kind of formation Arteta is going to play next season. But I think an attacking right back was another thing that Arsenal were missing. Obviously, Ben White's a good player, good defensively, but wasn't good enough going forward. Didn't give them an option. And I think Cancelo, as you said, last year, not last season, but the season before, he was the best fullback in the Premier League, like hands down. He could play. He's probably at one stage he was the best left back and right back. He play either position. Top player, even for Portugal, performs all the time. Maybe defensively at stages can be a liability, but you're going to get that with a fullback. And as you said, Alfonso Davis was really poor. I seen he's getting linked away from Bayern Munich as well. So it was strange to see Cancelo really struggle to get in that team with both managers, with Nagelsmann and Tuchel. But I just think Arsenal is the right choice. Like thinking of like obviously there's going to be teams in Europe, but for Arsenal they need that position and the Arteta link as well. I just think it'd be perfect, to be honest.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be one that we're going to need to keep our eyes on over the next couple of weeks because, like I said, just for the viewers at home, there is definitely no reconciliation here. City will not be keeping Cancelo on, and Cancelo will not be at Manchester City next season. Um,
Depends on the fee as well, though, lads. Like the buyout clause for Bayern Munich was 70 million euros. Like that's a lot of money. Don't get me wrong, he's worth it, but if they're so desperate to sell him, we could genuinely see Cancelo go for 40 million.
Oh, 100%. 100%. Lad, I do think that's the way that transfer is going to go. There's no way City will get 70 million for him. And by all means, I'm not saying that they won't get 70 million because of his ability. I just think if the player's that desperate to leave and the club are that desperate to see the player go, there's not a chance that they can charge 70 million. It would be outrageous. But look, like I said, just going to be one of those that we will be covering here on the podcast. So stay tuned to hear more about Joe Cancelo. Moving on then, lads, to Chelsea. Obviously, awful season last season. Mason Mount being linked to Manchester United. We'll not go into that right now, but Christopher Nkunku, that deal was confirmed and announced today. £65 million, or sorry, €65 million, 5-year contract with the option of another year. And they will be activating the release clause of Nicholas Jackson of Villarreal for €35 million. Looking at both players here, lads, both made 25 appearances in their respective leagues this season. Nkunku, 16 goals and 14 assists. Absolutely incredible numbers. And Nicholas Jackson then scoring 12 goals and 4 assists. So, really, what you're looking at here is a real refresh to Chelsea's forward line. So, Oren, coming to you first then. I would say these are two good signings. Would you be in agreement with me?
100%, yeah, 100%. But it's one of them things with Chelsea as well. Like, I thought Mudryk was going to be a good signing. I thought Jay Felix was actually a good signing. Um, they do sign that many players that a lot of players go under the radar. So I hope for a personal level on both players that they succeed, but it's difficult, especially the Nkunku transfer. I would be very, very interested to understand Nkunku's thinking now, because obviously that transfer was agreed in December. Um, and although, yes, back in December we did say that Chelsea wouldn't get European football and stuff, that's absolutely fine. But it wasn't out of the realms of possibility. But now with no European football and stuff, I'd be interested to understand if Nkunku is disappointed that he's not going to be playing European football, or if he regrets maybe signing for Chelsea and stuff. But on ability level, look, I'm not going to sit here and say I know a lot about Nicholas Jackson. It was actually you, Richie, who told me about Nicholas Jackson last year playing for Villarreal. I said, "Who is this fella?" And you were like, "Yeah, he's balling this year." €35 million release clause. To me, that's a no risk signing for Chelsea, because Chelsea are going to be making huge money transfers for the next foreseeable future. Do you know what I mean? So this is going to go down as one of their cheap signings, despite it being €35 million. So he can't fail in my eyes. And to be honest, Christopher Nkunku, €65 million is not a lot for a player that we've seen absolutely dominate European football for the last 3-4 years at RB Leipzig, not just in the Bundesliga, where he was top goal scorer last year and up in the numbers in the last few years, but in the Champions League he's been absolutely ridiculous as well for RB Leipzig, and he's only going to improve. I do think this year out of Europe will actually improve him as a player, because it'll give him more time to focus on adapting to the Premier League. So I think it'll be really, really good for him, and in terms of that anyway. But in terms of competing, don't think Chelsea will be anywhere near the Premier League next year. I don't think they'll be. I think they'll struggle to be competing for top four. I do think they'll get European football again next year. And I do genuinely think that Nkunku and Jackson will play a major part in that. It just really, really does depend on what kind of role, especially Jackson's going to get, because their wage bill is humongous. Do you know what I mean? So where does he fit in there? I think we can all agree that Nkunku slots straight into the first 11, but just I'd be wary of how much game time Jackson gets unless they can sell loads and loads of players.
Mm-hmm. Well, look, the only thing I would say about Jackson is, Chelsea have been crying out for a proper striker, and this is a proper striker that has become available on the market for, €35 million nowadays is really, really cheap. And this is a guy that only really broke out sort of in the second half of the season and got his 12 goals in the second half of the season. So I think there's definitely potential there. Connor, really just, looking at these two transfers as an overview, look, obviously Chelsea are still going to need to do more business in the summer, but they also need to get rid of players too. So really, would you say these first two signings are a sign of maybe things to come for Chelsea?
Yeah, definitely. As we said last season, the struggle to score goals. And Kunku, I actually think is an upgrade over Havertz. I know he's coming from the same league in the Bundesliga, but as Oren was saying, even in the Champions League, he was very, very good. It would be actually a good question. Like, yeah, obviously, he signed the deal back in December. Would he have signed for them if he knew there was no Champions League football? Because obviously, Orby got Champions League football and Chelsea don't. But yeah, they needed a strike. They needed goals, and as you said with this other guy Jackson, 12 goals in only like 26 games or something. And you said most of the goals were in the second half of the season, so he is a good player. La Liga is obviously a top five league. Um, it's gonna be the offloading as well. I see that a lot of the players that are getting offloaded are going to the Saudi league, and there is a bit of talk that the public investment fund is linked to the Chelsea majority shareholder, and they're getting offloading players and huge wages, which is going to help because, as we keep saying, how is financial fair play? How they keep getting away with it, but for Chelsea, this is all they can do. They can get players in. They need strikers in. They're going to get rid of Lukaku, get money for him. They get rid of Kante. They're getting rid of Mendy's leaving. Um, Koulibaly's leaving as well. So it's going to be a strange season next year. It is going to be a good question. I don't know what you guys think, but do you think top four is what their aim is going to be next year? I know no Champions League football will help them because obviously they'll not be as tired and they have got a big squad under Poch.
I think top four for Chelsea will always be their aim. Whether they achieve it or not is another question. But I think for a club the size of Chelsea, and especially the recent success that Chelsea have had over recent years, I think Champions League qualification is always going to be a priority. It would be a similar sort of situation to Man United. When United drop out of the Champions League one year, they're almost expected to come right back at it the next year. So I do think the Champions League is priority for Chelsea. But like I said, whether they actually go on and achieve it or not, I'm not quite sure. Don't know about you, Warren.
No, I fully agree. I think Champions League qualification is a minimum requirement at Chelsea Football Club, and I think that's why we see such a turnover in managers. Because if they don't achieve that, you get the boot. Um, but yeah, I think it's a minimum requirement, and fully agree. Whether they get it or not, personally, can't see it next season. But yeah, Champions League football, it has to be where they're aiming at, because if they're not, what are they aiming for? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely that. Definitely. Well, look, moving it on then from Chelsea, going back to Brighton. I know we spoke a little bit about them last week, but they have managed to get another in through the door, confirmed, signed, sealed, and that is James Milner. Again, this is another player that we maybe didn't have the nicest of things to say last season about him. No doubt about it. At the age he is, to still be playing and even playing at as high a level as Brighton is to be commended. But what did you make of this, lads? Was this really just an experience signing? Just try and get another body in through the door? Or coming to you first, what did you make of Milner to Brighton?
Yeah, I think it's exactly what you just said, an experience signing. It's a fellow who's been in the Premier League for the guts of 25 years. He's 37 years of age. Well, no, obviously not. That'd be 12 then in the Premier League. He's been in the Premier League for like 20 years. But do you know what I mean? Like, in terms of experience, Premier League experience, there's nobody better than James Milner, you would have to say, to be honest, in terms of actually still playing. Um, and I think for a team like Brighton, I think it's crazy how he's got to Brighton, to be honest. I thought at this stage he might have went to Leeds down in the Championship, back to his hometown club or whatever. But yeah, he's went to Brighton, who have got European football. I think we will see a lot of people saying for Brighton this summer because, as you say, they need bodies in the door. When they will really, like, there's a huge difference in playing your domestic games in terms of your FA Cup, Carabao Cup, and Premier League, and then jumping to having even more games in a European competition. Like, that's going to be a huge jump for the players, which they will need to be ready for. There's going to be a lot more injuries at Brighton, so they need more players. And as you say, James Milner, he's done it. He's done it all. Do you know what I mean? He's won everything there is to win in terms of English football. So coming into Brighton on a free deal, it was a no-brainer for them, really. And he will get games. He's a versatile player, even at his age. We've seen him last season, even playing right back, left back, CDM, centre mid, fucking goalkeeper probably. He's that type of player. So yeah, it's only going to be a good deal for Brighton, and on a 1-year contract, it's a no-brainer. Like, it's no risk.
Yeah, absolutely. And I see, I can't remember what it is exactly, but I think he's like 30, maybe 30 games away, or like 37 games away or something from being the Premier League's all time top appearance maker. So I'm sure maybe in his own career, that's maybe something that he'd look at and think, that would be nice to achieve. Now, whether he has another 37 or 38 games in him is another question. But yeah, look, I would agree with you, Warren. I do think this is very much a sign in that's there to get another body in through the door. I still think Brighton are going to recruit quite heavily this summer. I think they are waiting for Colwell still to come in, and when Caicedo eventually leaves, they will have a wee bit more money to go out and spend as well. I'm seeing them linked to a lot of decent goalkeepers at the minute too, so I do think there's still some spending to be done at Brighton. But Connor, then look just on Milner, but before we move on from Brighton, really experience being added to this Brighton squad, and European experience, which is something that many of the Brighton squad don't actually have. So, in your opinion, then, what's your take on this transfer?
I think it's a really, really good signing. We've been talking about Brighton all year. They're a very young team as well, so that experience will definitely help a player, as you said, like consistently getting over like 30 Premier League appearances. I've seen even last year he had 31 Premier League appearances. Liverpool, a lot of them off the bench, obviously, but he even can be a good bench player. Obviously, if there's injuries, fitness is no question. You always hear these stories about he was winning every fitness race at the start of the year, and the Klopp loved him and spoke so highly of them. I was surprised. I actually thought Liverpool might have kept him on for another year. Maybe they tried to. I don't know, but a really top professional and a leader and someone Brighton need, as we've seen the kept Lallana as well about another older player with that experience. And De Zerbi, even when he was injured, he said, "I want to keep him. He might not play all the games, but we need him in the dressing room," which is a bit of an underrated thing in football. The dressing room, keeping that positivity, because you seen with Chelsea last year, when once that went, it's a disaster. Even United, 2 seasons ago, that you need that positivity, you need the experience, you need leaders, and that's what Brighton are trying to infiltrate into their team. And I think it's a big signing, and it shows where Brighton are, because I'm sure other clubs were looking at them. But Brighton are an up and coming team, and they have an exciting future.
Yeah, definitely agreed. And then gonna do a wee bit of a European and world roundup here as well, lads. So I just have two transfers left to talk about. The first one being Kim Min-Jae. Now this was obviously a big target for Manchester United in this window to get a centre back the quality level of Kim Min-Jae. But looks like United are going to be beat out to this signing by Bayern Munich. Personal terms agreed, and they've already told the player that they will be activating that release clause in July. And I have it on good authority from Isaac of United Cloud, who knows somebody close to the deal, who is saying that he was happy to accept Man United because that was the biggest financial packet on the table at the time. But Bayern Munich have since offered a bigger financial incentive, and therefore he will basically be going where the money is. So, coming to you first, then, Oren, is this leaving United with egg on their face, or is this just a circumstance of maybe United looking to put their money into other positions before looking at a centre back?
It could be. There's an element of both, Connor. In my opinion, I think we're going to struggle to do business while we are still in this ownership saga. I think we're going to see very, very few signings until this at least gets sorted on paper. Maybe not necessarily. We mightn't see new owners come in before the transfer window closes, but we'll need to be seeing new owners in the next couple of weeks if we're to do any business. That's just my opinion. I think yes, to an extent, this was probably it was well reported that Kim Min Jae was Eric Ten Hag's priority signing for centre back, um, and at the release clause of 49 or 52 million pounds or whatever it was, you know, he is 28 or 27 or 28. Like he's not exactly young. Do you know what I mean? Like it was going to be big money, especially after really only one quality season in a top European league. He was a Fenerbahce until last year. Do you know what I mean? So it could turn out to be a little bit of a risky signing for Bayern Munich. It could have turned out to be a risky signing for Manchester United. My opinions would have been the same if he had a sign for us. I do think personally that we have missed out on a top quality centre back, especially in a market where so few centre backs will be available. In around that price range. But there is other options for Manchester United. Of course, we've been linked with Desirare of Monaco and Todibo of OGC Nice, and even Urian Timber. There's slight links coming in there again, and you never know. We could hijack an Arsenal deal for an Ajax centre back once again this summer, like we did last summer. But for Bayern Munich, I think they're getting a top quality centre back. I think personally, this could be a signing that pushes them back to the Champions League, because this has been an area where we seen De Ligt come in last year and he was probably Bayern Munich's best player. Their fans absolutely ramped and raved about him all season. So a partnership of Kim Min-Jae and Matthias De Ligt could be a Champions League winning partnership, and to me, there's going to be no match for Borussia Dortmund next year. They're like, I know it came down to the final day this year, but with that sort of defence, if you can keep them fit, there's not a chance for them, in my opinion.
Yeah, look, it's definitely a very strong back two, no doubt about it. Both quick, both physical, both extremely comfortable on the ball as well. So look, I don't think that's completely out of the realms of possibility, to be honest, Oren. Connor, just really, or as Oren said, there I mentioned a couple of targets as well that United have maybe previously been linked at, or been linked with, and are still being linked with. So, you look at the likes of Kim Min-Jae, Yuri and Timber, they look to be on the move to other clubs. So again, similar sort of question to you: is this another case of United's mismanagement and maybe lack of investment in the transfer window?
Yeah, definitely. It's very frustrating. I think he could become a top centre back. Um, United done the same last year. They overpaid. Let's be honest. Obviously, Anthony was not good last. He was okay last year, but we overpaid for him. Even for Martinez, who was a top player, we overpaid for him. Our you know, transfers over the last number of years, we have overpaid for players. With Panic signed near the end of summers, again, is it going to come down to that? It's not selling. Like, we need to sell the club because they're not going to put any money in. Um, Obviously, Bayern are offering like a better financial package, but let's be honest, United could definitely match that. And I feel sorry for Ten Hag because yet again he's not getting his first choice players. He wanted Timber last year. Obviously, that was kind of because of Timber backing out. But there's just a frustration there. I think this one could be a huge miss. I think he could be a top player, and I know we're all United fans, and you you want to stay positive, but it seems to be the same old every summer. We're waiting, we're panicking then at the end of summers, and we're not giving these players enough time to, get used to Ten Hag's tactics. It's taken months and months and months for these players to perform at the top level. You're seeing with Arsenal, you're seeing with City, you're seeing with Liverpool. They're going in early, they're getting their signings in early. United yet again lacking behind.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Agreed. And finally, then, lads, just to wrap up this episode, one last transfer to talk about today. Personal terms agreed for the free agent Sergio Busquets, who left Barcelona, going to Inter Miami, joining Lionel Messi, who we talked at length about last week. Oren, really, like you said last week, you posed the question: does Messi attract other players to come to MLS? And there, he's being joined by his former teammate Sergio Busquets. Looks like Jordi Alba's on the way as well. So, look, Oren, well, coming to you first. Busquets, Inter Miami, good fit.
Yeah, 100%. I've said it once, I'll say it again. Sergio Busquets, if you watch Sergio Busquets, you see the whole game, but if you watch the whole game, you won't see Sergio Busquets. That's the type of player he is. He'll do the dog work for you. He's probably one of the best home midfielders ever. And I think as he winds down his career, the MLS would be a good fit for him. A bit of a slower league. And, he never really had the legs, but he always knew his positioning was always what was best about Sergio Busquets, and how he provided for those two fantastic midfielders in front of him, Xavi and Iniesta, for the most part of his career. But yeah, as I say, look, MLS isn't going to be a big problem for him. I'm going to stick with what I said last week about Lionel Messi. I don't think the signings of Sergio Busquets and Jordi Alba immediately just gives Inter Miami the MLS Cup, but who knows? Who knows? Um, it's a no-brainer on a free deal. Jordi Alba, experienced, no-brainer on a free deal. Getting them three back together is fantastic, and I think that is all of their DPS. Then I think you only get three DPS in the MLS. So I don't think we'll see any more signings from the European market anyway. Going to Inter Miami. But we could definitely see more players going to the MLS, like we're seeing them go to the Saudi League. As we said about Cristiano Ronaldo, he has that draw, bringing players into the Saudi League, and Lionel Messi will do the exact same in MLS. But for Sergio Busquets and Jordi Alba, yeah, good signings.
Yeah, definitely, lad, definitely. And look, Connor, really, just to touch on something that Oren said there. Look, you know, the three DP rule that is in the MLS. Obviously, we're seeing a lot of players going to Saudi Arabia now, and there isn't that restriction on the Saudi Arabian league. So really, just a just interested to get your opinion on this. Obviously, American sports don't really like the term super team, and that's why we have the likes of salary caps, max contract, super max contracts, all that kind of thing within American sports. So, could you see Saudi Arabia introducing something like that, or do you think that they're a bit different to America? Do you think they're happy enough to have these sort of super teams?
Well, as I said earlier, the investment fund bought the four best teams. They're going to pump all their money into the four best teams. I can't see them doing something like that, to be honest. I know it used to happen in England as well. They kind of went away from that, but I think it is a good way to be for the MLS because it does bring through more talent. These younger players. I think they still draft in the MLS and stuff like that. It brings through these young players and it improves the league. This is the thing about the Saudi league that I would question is just like obviously you're getting the top players like Benzema and all Kante and all. It's just the players around them. That's the thing I would question because the standard difference could be huge, especially with the lower teams. But I think something like that could be useful for the Saudi league if they're really going to improve their youth and have sustainability for the future. Because I feel like China didn't have that either. They were just letting anybody sign anybody, and then it ended in disaster. So I do like the MLS structure doing that because it gives young players a chance, and it also brings, as you said, no super teams. It brings fairness, and that's more what you want. You want a competitive league, and I agree with the one. I don't think just getting Messi means you're going to win the league. While Benzema's went to the team that won the league, so you'd be thinking, who's going to stop them?
Yeah, definitely, lad, definitely. And Owen, yeah, again, same question to you. What do you think about it? Do you agree with the way that the MLS do it?
Yeah, I agree with the way they do it. It gives their own talent a platform to build upon. If the MLS continued in the way that it kind of first started when the likes of Beckham and stuff went to the league, we wouldn't see well, we wouldn't see such a strong American national team. I don't know if you would agree with me in that, but I think the American national team is like the men's team is getting really, really strong. We're seeing a lot more of them players playing regularly in Europe's top five leagues, and I think the likes of the Christian Pulisic, the LeBron James of soccer transfer to Chelsea all those years ago. I don't think we would have seen that if there wasn't the likes of this 3DP rule, because you mightn't have seen him get playing. Alfonso Davies, another one who came from the MLS. It was a whimsical transfer of him going to Bayern Munich, and it paid off. So, it makes sense for that league. And I agree with Connor. Can't see it coming into the Saudi Arabian League. I think they're going to pump as much money in as possible to try and get this, on paper at least, as a top five league, as a competitive league. But yeah, I agree with it because it gives their own talent a platform to build upon.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's something, when Connor talked about the sustainability of the league, that's definitely something that's very, very important. You know, China's the state of Chinese football. It's not great at the minute because of that influx of players that come into the country, but then left whenever those financial rules were implicated, and then You know, you look at the MLS, there's a good crop of American talent coming through that realistically can keep the league going as well and keep their national team growing. I do agree with you, Warren. I do think that's a big reason as to why the US men's national team is as strong as what it is, really. And I think Saudi Arabia could fall into the trap that China did, where when all these big players leave, or call it a day, are the players from their own country going to be as strong and able to stand on their own 2 feet in that sense? I don't think so. I don't think so. But look, that'll do it for this episode anyway. That was our second transfer installment. As always, you can find us on the Parlay Sports app. That's PRLY Sports on the Apple App Store. At Bottom Bins Pod is our handle for Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. Plenty of content going to be pumped up there in the next few weeks. And as always, keep it bottom bins.
Keep it bottom bin.
Ottomans.